The night was bright with chandeliers that reflected thousands of tiny lights across the grand ballroom. The room was full of people dressed in sparkling gowns and tailored suits. Everyone seemed to know everyone, or at least acted like it. They laughed, they sipped champagne, and they talked about business, politics, and charity work. But in the corner of the room, there was a woman who seemed to belong to another world entirely. She was working quietly, moving from table to table, ensuring that guests had drinks, refilled glasses, and soft smiles when anyone looked at her. She wore a simple dress, modest and neat, nothing fancy, nothing to draw attention. Her hair was pinned back carefully, and she had a calm, almost invisible presence. She was there to do a job, to be seen as nothing more than someone who kept the event running smoothly. She had been working in this line of service for many years. She knew how to move without being noticed, how to smile politely when someone looked at her, and how to make people feel comfortable while she stayed in the shadows. Most people at events like this never remembered her name, never spoke to her, and never gave her a second thought. She had learned to accept it. Life had taught her that sometimes invisibility was safer. But deep down, she carried a secret with her, something that could change how people saw her if they ever knew. She had a talent, a gift that she had practiced quietly for years. A talent she rarely showed, talent that was waiting for the right moment. The billionaire of the evening, the host of the gala, was moving through the room with ease. He greeted people warmly, shaking hands, exchanging smiles, making small talk that seemed effortless. He had everything a person could want: wealth, influence, power. But despite all of it, he had a curiosity that not many could see. He noticed details, small things that others ignored. That night, as he passed the corner where the woman was, he caught a glimpse of something unusual. She had paused for a moment near the grand piano that stood on the stage, her fingers brushing lightly across the keys. It was so subtle that most people would have missed it, but he saw it. The way her fingers moved, almost absent-mindedly, held a certain grace. It was a motion full of familiarity and confidence. He stopped, watching for a moment, intrigued. There was something about her, something that made him want to know more. The woman didn't notice him at first. She was focused on her work, serving guests, making sure everything was perfect. But something about the way he was looking at her made her glance up. Their eyes met for a brief moment. There was no recognition, no previous meeting, just a fleeting connection that carried weight neither of them could explain. The billionaire smiled politely, nodding as if to say hello, but there was more behind his gaze. He saw potential, a spark, something waiting to be revealed. He continued his walk through the room, but he could not shake the image of her by the piano. There was a pull, a curiosity that made him pause and turn back. He observed her from a distance, noticing the way she moved, quiet and deliberate, like a dancer who had rehearsed her steps thousands of times. Guests continued their conversations, unaware of the silent story unfolding in the corner of the room. And then, almost instinctively, he made a decision that would change the course of the evening. He approached her slowly, walking past the tables, past the laughing guests, until he reached the edge of the piano stage. She looked up again, startled, unsure why he was standing there. The room was large, the lights bright, and yet, in that moment, it felt as if it had narrowed to just the two of them. The guests continued to chatter, but their words seemed distant, like background noise. He spoke, his voice calm but with authority. He invited her to play, not for entertainment, not for the crowd, but because he wanted to see what she could do. He wanted to understand the movement he had seen in her fingers, the quiet confidence that set her apart. Her heart skipped a beat. She had not played in public for years, not in front of anyone who mattered, not in front of strangers with wealth and judgment in their eyes. She was not sure if she could, if she should. Her hands trembled slightly, but it was not fear, it was anticipation. A mix of excitement and anxiety that she had not felt in a long time. She had always loved music, had always poured her emotions into every note she played when she was alone. But performing in front of a room full of strangers, people who would not understand, was something else entirely. She hesitated for a moment, glancing at the piano. It was a beautiful instrument, polished and shining, the kind of piano that could make even a simple song sound extraordinary. The billionaire's gaze encouraged her, his expectation not intimidating but inviting. Slowly, she walked toward the piano, each step deliberate, feeling the weight of every eye in the room on her. Even though most had not noticed the moment yet, the closer she got, the louder her own heartbeat became. It was a rhythm she knew well, one that felt amplified in the grand room, filled with strangers. The guests began to notice her approaching the piano. Whispers started to ripple through the room. Some laughed quietly, thinking it was part of the entertainment. Some looked confused, wondering why a simple staff member was being invited to perform. She could feel the judgment, the skepticism, the disbelief. But she pushed it aside, focusing on the keys in front of her. She had prepared for moments like this in her own mind countless times. She had imagined the audience, imagined the fear, imagined the beauty of the music, and now it was real. She sat down on the piano bench, her back straight, her fingers hovering over the keys. The room seemed to hold its breath. Even the billionaire, standing slightly to the side, watched intently. No one spoke. The air was thick with anticipation. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a brief moment, and let her hands find the keys. The first note rang out, soft and careful, yet filled with emotion. It was as if the piano had been waiting for her touch, responding to her presence. The sound was clear, resonant, and it cut through the chatter and laughter that had filled the room moments before. Guests began to turn toward her. Realizing that this was not a planned performance, their surprise was evident. Some frowned, thinking this might be a mistake. Others leaned closer, curiosity replacing doubt. The music grew, each note more confident than the last. Her hands moved with fluidity, drawing out melodies that seemed too grand for someone so unassuming. The whispers turned to silence. People stopped moving, stopped talking, and listened. The woman had become the center of attention without intending to, without seeking it. She was not performing for fame or recognition. She was performing because it was who she was. The music demanded to be heard. The billionaire watched, a small smile playing on his lips. He had known there was something special about her from the moment he saw her fingers brush the piano keys. But hearing her play in that moment was beyond expectation. The grace, the emotion, the undeniable talent, it was all there. She was no longer invisible, no longer a background figure. She had claimed the room and everyone in it, simply by being herself and sharing her gift. As the music continued, her confidence grew. She was no longer thinking about the guests or their judgment. She was thinking only of the music of the story she was telling with every note. The room had become a living space of sound and emotion, and she was the guide, leading everyone through her personal journey. The grandeur of the ballroom, the wealth of the guests, the brilliance of the chandeliers, all of it faded into the background. There was only the music and the story it carried. By the time the final note lingered and faded into silence, the room was completely still. Guests were frozen, caught in the aftermath of what they had just heard. The woman sat at the piano, hands resting lightly on the keys, chest heaving slightly from the effort and emotion. She had done it. She had played, not for approval, not for applause, but because it was time for her talent to be seen, for her story to begin unfolding in front of the world she had always felt apart from. The billionaire stepped forward, clapping slowly, deliberately, signaling not only admiration, but acknowledgement. He had recognized her talent and her courage, and he wanted the world to see it too. In that moment, the woman realized that everything had changed. She had stepped out of the shadows, into a light she had never imagined for herself. And while the room was still, frozen in disbelief and awe, she felt something even more important. She felt alive, seen, and ready for whatever came next. The room had just begun to recover from the unexpected display of talent she had given. Guests who had been chatting moments before now sat or stood frozen, uncertain how to respond. Some looked at her with wide eyes, while others whispered softly to each other, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The music still lingered in the air, every note a reminder of the power she had displayed without even trying. She could feel the heat in her cheeks, a mixture of pride and nervousness. She was not used to this attention, and it unsettled her in ways she had never anticipated. As she stepped away from the piano, she noticed the guests staring not just at her, but at each other. Their expressions were a mix of surprise, admiration, and confusion. Some of them were clearly impressed, yet they could not hide the slight disbelief in their eyes. How could someone so ordinary, someone who had been invisible all evening, hold such extraordinary talent? It challenged their expectations and their perceptions of what they thought they knew about the world. The whispers became louder, but still respectful. People were trying to understand, to rationalize, to fit this extraordinary moment into their understanding of reality. The billionaire approached her quietly. His presence calm and encouraging. He did not say much at first, only offered a nod of acknowledgement and a small, genuine smile. It was enough to steady her nerves. She had feared judgment, but his confidence in her made her believe, if only for a moment, that she was allowed to step out of the shadows. She could feel the eyes of the room upon her, but instead of shrinking, she drew strength from the realization that she had faced her fear and triumphed. She moved back toward her duties, serving drinks and attending to guests as if nothing had happened, though the echoes of her performance lingered in the room. Each step she took was careful, measured, and deliberate. She had to maintain her composure, to continue the work she had always done, even as the memory of the piano and the music filled her mind. It was a delicate balance, moving between the role she had always known and the role that was now opening before her. She felt a strange combination of exhaustion and exhilaration, as if she had run a long race, but also discovered a new horizon. Flashbacks began to surface in her mind, memories she had tried to push aside over the years. She remembered the first time she had touched a piano, the feeling of the keys beneath her fingers, the sound resonating through her body in ways that words could never capture. She remembered the hours of practice she had given, alone in small, dimly lit rooms, pouring her heart into each note. The music had been her sanctuary, a place where she could express emotions she could never speak aloud. And yet, the world had never seen it. People had never understood it, till now. Her thoughts were interrupted by the subtle sounds of the guests moving closer, trying to catch glimpses of her expression, to read the story behind the music. Some approached with cautious curiosity, others with genuine admiration. They wanted to know who she was, how someone with such talent had remained hidden for so long. She responded with modesty, offering quiet words and polite smiles. She did not boast, did not explain, did not reveal the depth of her struggles. The music had spoken for her, and she let it be enough. The billionaire lingered nearby, observing her interactions, silently ensuring she felt supported. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight hesitation in her movements, and he understood the weight of the moment she was carrying. It was not just about playing the piano, it was about stepping into a world that had not expected her, about facing judgment and disbelief while remaining true to herself. He had been in rooms like this countless times, seen people judged by appearances underestimated by society, but he had rarely witnessed someone challenge expectations so effortlessly. Her performance had disrupted the order of the evening. He found it refreshing, inspiring, and deeply moving. As the night progressed, she continued to serve with quiet grace, but the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations had changed. Whispers were no longer dismissive, but filled with curiosity and intrigue. People who had initially ignored her now glanced her way, some with admiration, some with a cautious respect. She noticed the difference and felt a strange sense of empowerment. The simple act of playing the piano had altered the way the room perceived her, and in turn, the way she perceived herself. Her mind wandered back to the countless obstacles she had faced in her life. She had been underestimated repeatedly, dismissed because of her appearance, her background, or her role in society. Yet she had persisted, nurturing her talent in secret, believing that one day someone or something would recognize it. The night at the gala was that moment. She realized that her perseverance had led to this recognition, and the acknowledgement was not just from the billionaire or the guests, but from herself. She had proven above all that her abilities were real, that her dedication had value, and that her voice could be heard even in the most unexpected of places. As she moved between tables, she noticed a few guests attempting to engage her in conversation about her music. She spoke with careful humility, answering questions with honesty, but never exaggerating her accomplishments. She wanted her story to be understood, but not sensationalized. Her talent was not a gimmick, not a performance for attention. It was a part of her, a reflection of her experiences, her struggles, and her emotions. The more she spoke, the more she realized that people were genuinely interested in her as a person, not just as a performer. It was a revelation, one that warmed her heart and eased her anxieties. The billionaire watched this quietly, noting her poise and the subtle way she commanded attention without seeking it. He had invited her to the piano, not knowing exactly what would happen. But now he saw that her influence extended beyond music. She had a presence, a quiet strength, and an authenticity that resonated with everyone around her. It was rare to witness someone who could inspire not through words or wealth, but through the simple act of being true to themselves. He felt a growing respect and admiration for her, understanding that she was extraordinary not only for her talent but for her character. Time seemed to stretch and contract as the evening continued. The initial shock of her performance had settled into a calm recognition of her abilities. Guests approached with polite compliments, asking questions about her background, her training, and her inspirations. She answered with care, offering glimpses of her journey without revealing everything. She was cautious, aware that her life had been private, and that not everyone would understand or appreciate her struggles. Yet she felt a sense of connection with those who listened attentively, who valued her story and respected her resilience. At one point, she found herself standing near the piano again, her fingers grazing the keys as if unconsciously drawn to them. The room had shifted completely. It was no longer just a place for socializing and displaying wealth. It had become a space where something deeper, something human, had been shared. The music had opened a door, and now people were beginning to understand that talent, passion, and emotion could come from unexpected places. She realized that she had not only changed her own path, but had also influenced the perception of everyone present. As the night wound down, she felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. The initial fear of being judged had given way to a quiet confidence. She had faced the expectations of the room, met them with authenticity, and left a mark that could not be ignored. The billionaire approached once more, this time offering a word of encouragement, acknowledging the courage it took to step into the spotlight. She nodded, grateful for the recognition, but aware that the journey was just beginning. There were still challenges ahead, still moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long while, she felt truly capable of meeting them. She returned to her duties with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying herself differently, moving with an awareness of her own strength. The guests continued their conversations, now tinged with respect and admiration. A memory of her performance lingered in their minds, a reminder that appearances could be deceiving and that talent often lay hidden where least expected. She had not sought fame or validation, yet she had earned both in a single night through honesty, skill, courage. As the final guest departed and the lights dimmed, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The piano, once a source of private solace, had become a bridge between her world and that of others. She had shared a piece of herself, and in doing so, had begun to reshape her destiny. The evening had proven that true talent and determination could break barriers, challenge expectations, and leave an indelible mark. She felt a sense of gratitude, not for the attention or recognition, but for the opportunity to be seen, to be heard, and to be acknowledged for who she truly was. The days following the gala were a blur of activity and reflection for her. She returned to her usual life, moving through the world with quiet determination, but something had changed within her. The memory of the piano, the touch of the keys, and the reactions of the guests had etched themselves deeply into her mind. It was as if a door had opened that she could no longer close. She found herself thinking about the music at odd moments, the melodies replaying in her mind, urging her to explore them further. For the first time in a long while, she felt a hunger not for recognition, but for expression. At work, she noticed people looking at her differently. There was a subtle shift in the way she was treated. Some guests who had attended the gala approached her with a smile or a nod, acknowledging her presence in a way that was new and unexpected. It was not about status or hierarchy, it was about respect. She carried herself with a quiet pride, aware that she had faced something terrifying and had emerged unshaken. Yet beneath the calm exterior, there was a storm of emotion she had not anticipated. Anxiety mingled with excitement, fear with anticipation, and doubt with a newfound confidence. She knew that she had experienced something remarkable, but the weight of it still pressed upon her. Her thoughts often drifted back to the moment she first touched the piano at the gala. She could feel the smoothness of the keys beneath her fingers, the resonance of each note vibrating through her body. The memory was vivid and almost tangible, as if she could reach out and relive the experience at any time. She thought about the reactions of the guests, the disbelief and awe in their eyes. She thought about the billionaire's expression, the small but meaningful nod of acknowledgement. It was not just recognition, it was understanding. For the first time, someone had truly seen her talent, truly valued her abilities. Yet, with the recognition came an unexpected burden. She found herself questioning whether she could live up to the expectations now placed upon her. The thought of performing again, of stepping into a spotlight she had long avoided, brought both excitement and fear. She had always found solace in the private nature of her music, the intimacy of playing alone. Sharing it with others, exposing her soul through sound, was a different experience entirely. She realized that talent alone was not enough. Courage, resilience, and the willingness to face judgment were equally important. One evening, she sat quietly in her small apartment, her fingers hovering over the keys of a modest piano she had at home. She hesitated, taking a deep breath, and then began to play. The notes were tentative at first, cautious and careful, as if testing the waters. But soon, the music began to flow, growing in confidence and complexity. She allowed herself to become fully immersed in the sound, letting the emotions of the past weeks pour through her fingers. She played not for anyone else, but for herself, reconnecting with the essence of why she had loved music in the first place. The melodies carried both pain and joy, fear and hope, creating a tapestry of sound that was uniquely hers as she played. She thought about the guests at the gala and the silent awe that had filled the room. She realized that her performance had done more than showcase her talent, it had touched people in ways words could not. Music had a power that transcended social boundaries, appearances, and expectations. She had felt it then, and she felt it again now. The realization was both comforting and motivating. She knew that she wanted to continue sharing her music, not for fame, not for recognition, but because it was a part of her identity, a language through which she could communicate her deepest emotions. The days that followed were filled with reflection and planning. She began to consider what it would mean to step further into the world she had glimpsed at the gala. Opportunities had not yet presented themselves, but the possibility of them lingered in her mind. She contemplated reaching out to mentors, exploring avenues for performances, and finding ways to cultivate her talent more openly. The thought was both exhilarating and daunting. She had always been self-reliant, and the idea of navigating the expectations of others, of stepping into a world she had long avoided, was intimidating. Yet the spark that had been ignited at the gala burned brightly within her, guiding her through the uncertainty. At work, she continued her duties with the same quiet dedication, but her perspective had shifted. Every interaction, every task, felt infused with a deeper sense of purpose. She was no longer merely going through the motions. She was aware of her own agency, her capacity to influence the world around her through talent, determination, and authenticity. The guests began to notice a subtle change in her demeanor, quiet confidence that was both magnetic and inspiring. It was not overt or demanding, but it commanded attention in a way that could not be ignored. Her family and close friends began to sense the change as well. They saw her moving with a sense of purpose, speaking with more conviction, and carrying herself with an air of quiet dignity. Some were surprised, having never seen her step out of the shadows, while others were quietly proud, recognizing the culmination of years of dedication and perseverance. She shared her experiences cautiously, revealing only pieces of the story, letting the music speak where words might fail. The act of sharing her journey, even in fragments, brought her closer to those she cared about. Creating connections rooted in understanding and empathy, the piano became her constant companion, source of both solace and challenge. She experimented with new compositions, explored different techniques, and allowed herself to take risks she had previously avoided. Each session brought new discoveries, moments of frustration, and bursts of inspiration. She learned to trust her instincts, to listen to the subtle nuances of the music, and to embrace the imperfections that made each performance unique. Through this process, she discovered a deeper layer of her own resilience. Recognizing that growth often required stepping into discomfort and uncertainty, one afternoon, she received an unexpected message from someone who had attended the gala. It was a simple note, expressing admiration for her performance and curiosity about her background. The words were sincere and respectful, acknowledging her talent and courage without imposing expectations. Reading the message, she felt a mix of surprise and warmth. It was a reminder that the world could respond positively to authenticity, that there were people who valued substance over appearances. The note inspired her to continue exploring opportunities, to embrace the potential that had been awakened within her. As the days turned into weeks, she began to envision a path forward. She imagined performing in more formal settings, sharing her music with audiences who might not yet know her story. She considered teaching, mentoring, and collaborating with other musicians. Recognizing that her influence could extend beyond her own performances, each possibility sparked both excitement and anxiety. But the fear was tempered by the knowledge that she had already faced a moment of profound exposure and had emerged stronger. She had proven to herself that she could step into the unknown and navigate it with grace and resilience. Throughout this period, the memory of the gala remained vivid. She often replayed the moments in her mind the way the lights had reflected off the chandeliers. The subtle expressions of the guests, the silent acknowledgement from the billionaire. These memories served as both motivation and reassurance, reminding her of the transformative power of courage and authenticity. She understood that her journey was far from over, but she also recognized that she had taken a crucial first step. The act of sharing her music, of allowing herself to be seen, had set in motion a series of changes that could not be undone. In quiet moments, she reflected on the lessons she had learned. She realized that talent alone was not enough to navigate the world. It required courage, humility, and the willingness to face vulnerability. She understood that her journey would involve challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but she also knew that each step would contribute to her growth. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a companion, a mirror, and a guide. Through it, she could express herself, connect with others, and explore the depths of her own potential, the anticipation of future opportunities. Combined with the confidence she had gained, fueled her determination. She began to set small goals, experimenting with performances in more intimate settings, seeking feedback, and refining her technique. Each experience, no matter how modest, contributed to her development and reinforced her belief in her abilities. She discovered that progress was not always linear, but every note played, every challenge faced, brought her closer to the realization of her full potential. As part 3 of her journey drew to a close, she found herself standing at the threshold of a new chapter. The memories of the gala, the whispers of admiration, and the encouragement of the billionaire had all converged to create a sense of possibility. She understood that the path ahead would require courage, dedication, and resilience, but she also recognized that she was equipped to navigate it. The music had opened doors, the experience had shifted perceptions, and she was ready to embrace the journey that lay before her. Confident in her ability to face the unknown and shape her own destiny, the days passed with a quiet intensity, and soon she received an unexpected invitation. It was from the billionaire, the host of the gala. Requesting her presence at a private event, he was organizing a small gathering of guests who were known for their appreciation of art and music. She hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready to step back into a world that had both awed and intimidated her. The memory of the first performance lingered, a mixture of pride, anxiety, and wonder. but after moments of contemplation, she decided to accept the invitation. It was an opportunity not just to share her music, but to confront her fears and embrace a part of herself she had long kept hidden. On the day of the event, she prepared meticulously. Her hands hovered over the piano keys at home, testing the movements. Letting the melodies flow through her fingers as practice and meditation intertwined. She was aware of the expectations, though she tried to keep them at bay. This was her music, her expression, and it had to remain genuine. She dressed simply, yet elegantly, choosing attire that made her feel confident without drawing unnecessary attention. It was a delicate balance. She wanted to be presentable, yet she did not want the focus to be on her appearance. Her mind was already occupied with the music and the emotions she wanted to convey. Arriving at the event, she felt a wave of anticipation. The room was smaller than the gala, more intimate, with fewer people but an air of sophistication. Guests were mingling, discussing art, literature, and music, but the atmosphere was calm, less overwhelming than the previous event. The billionaire greeted her warmly, offering reassurance and encouragement. His confidence in her abilities was unwavering, and it bolstered her own resolve. She felt a sense of gratitude, realizing that someone believed in her without conditions, without judgment. That belief was a powerful gift, one she could draw upon as she prepared to perform. As the evening progressed, she observed the guests, noting the subtle ways in which they interacted with the world and each other. There was an expectation of refinement, of decorum, but also a curiosity, a genuine interest in the arts. She recognized that this audience might appreciate her music in a way that transcended appearances and social status. The thought comforted her, though it also heightened her awareness of the responsibility she carried. Each note would be a reflection of herself, and she wanted it to resonate truthfully, to communicate the emotions that words often failed to capture. When the moment came to play, she approached the piano with a steady breath. The room quieted naturally, as if the guests sensed the importance of the moment. She seated herself and allowed her fingers to find the keys. The first notes were soft, tentative, and filled with careful intention. She played with a sensitivity born from years of private practice, allowing the music to emerge organically. Each melody told a story, capturing both the vulnerability and strength that defined her journey. The guests listened attentively, drawn into the world she was creating with each note. As she continued, her confidence grew. The melodies became richer, more complex, yet never forced. She allowed herself to feel the music fully, to let it guide her through the narrative she wished to convey. Emotions surfaced, memories of past struggles, moments of triumph. The quiet determination that had carried her through years of doubt and invisibility. The room seemed to dissolve around her, leaving only the music and the connection it fostered. She played not to impress, not to perform for applause, but to communicate, to share the essence of herself in its purest form. Guests were visibly moved. Some closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them, while others leaned forward, captivated by the precision and emotion in her performance. There were no whispers of disbelief, no questioning of her place in the room. Here, her talent spoke for itself, and the audience responded with genuine appreciation. It was a transformative experience, not just for her, but for those who listened. The music created a bridge between lives, experiences, and emotions, connecting them in a shared moment of human understanding. The billionaire watched quietly from the side, subtle smile playing on his lips. He had witnessed something extraordinary, both at the gala and now in this intimate gathering. But here, the depth of her expression was even more apparent. He realized that talent alone did not define her courage. Authenticity and emotional resonance were equally compelling. The performance reaffirmed his belief in her potential, and he felt a sense of pride in having played a small role in creating the opportunity for her to shine. Midway through the performance, she allowed herself a brief pause, letting a single chord linger in the air. It was a moment of reflection, a breath within the music, giving both herself and the audience time to absorb the journey she was presenting. In that pause, she felt the weight of the past and the promise of the future converging. Her fingers returned to the keys, flowing with renewed energy and precision. The melodies soared, capturing hope, resilience, and the quiet joy of self-expression. Each note was deliberate, yet infused with spontaneity, a reflection of the balance she had found within herself. As the final notes resonated, the room remained silent for a heartbeat longer than expected. Then, one by one, guests began to clap, softly at first, then with increasing intensity. The applause was not just for the technical skills she had displayed, but for the authenticity, emotion, and courage that had shaped the performance. She allowed herself a small, humble nod, acknowledging the appreciation without seeking to draw attention to herself. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a culmination of years of dedication and perseverance. After the performance, several guests approached her to offer their compliments and express curiosity about her journey. She responded with grace, sharing parts of her story while maintaining the humility that had always defined her. Each conversation reinforced her understanding that talent and authenticity could resonate deeply, and that recognition, when genuine, was a powerful and affirming experience. The connections she made were not superficial. They were grounded in respect and shared appreciation for art, emotion, and human experience. The billionaire joined her, expressing his admiration and delight. He spoke not only of her performance, but also of the courage it took to share her gift with the world. His words were genuine, devoid of expectation or pressure, and they provided a profound sense of validation. She felt seen, understood, and supported, which strengthened her resolve to continue pursuing her passion. The encounter reinforced the notion that true recognition comes from acknowledgement of effort, authenticity, and the courage to embrace vulnerability. As the evening wound down, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The experience had been transformative, affirming her abilities and instilling a deeper sense of confidence. She realized that the journey she had embarked upon was not about fame or accolades, but about self-expression, growth, and connection. The music had provided a means to communicate emotions that words could not convey, and the response from the audience had reinforced the significance of sharing her gift with the world. In the days that followed, she continued to explore her talent, experimenting with new compositions and refining her technique. Each session at the piano became an opportunity to delve deeper into her own emotions and experiences, transforming them into music that could touch others. She began to consider opportunities for further performances, both intimate and public, recognizing that the journey ahead was filled with possibilities. The confidence she had gained at the private event became a foundation for future endeavors, allowing her to approach new challenges with resilience and authenticity. She also began to reflect on the broader implications of her journey. Her experience demonstrated that talent and perseverance could overcome societal expectations and judgments. It showed that authenticity and courage could create meaningful connections, even in settings defined by status and appearance. She understood that her journey was not only about personal growth but also about inspiring others to recognize the value of their own abilities and experiences. The music had become a vehicle for connection, understanding, and transformation. The piano remained central to her life, a source of solace, inspiration, and self-expression. Each note played was a reminder of the journey she had undertaken, the fears she had faced, and the strength she had discovered within herself. She continued to cultivate her skills, embracing the challenges and opportunities that arose, and finding fulfillment in the process of sharing her gift with others. Through music, she discovered not only her own potential, but also the profound impact of authenticity, courage, and human connection. As part 4 of her journey drew to a close, she stood at the threshold of a new chapter, ready to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. The private event had reinforced her confidence, validated her talent, and deepened her understanding of the power of music. She knew that challenges and uncertainties would continue, but she also knew that she possessed the resilience, authenticity, and courage to navigate them. The experience had transformed her perspective, solidifying her commitment to sharing her music and allowing it to shape her path forward, one note at a time. The final part of her journey began quietly, with a sense of anticipation she could not fully name. She had grown accustomed to the piano being a private refuge. It's a place where emotions flowed freely, and yet now it had become a bridge to the world beyond her own life. After the private event, she had returned home, carrying not only the memory of that evening, but a deeper understanding of what it meant to share her gift. The notes she played now held purpose beyond personal expression. They were a language, a way to connect hearts and minds, and she could feel their power more acutely than ever. Weeks passed, and the invitation arrived unexpectedly. The billionaire, impressed not only by her talent, but by the grace and humility she displayed, asked her to perform at a prestigious gathering, one that would bring together some of the most influential and discerning individuals. The thought of stepping into a larger, more public arena both thrilled and terrified her. The private event had prepared her, but this was different. Here, the stakes were higher, the audience more discerning, and the eyes upon her more scrutinizing. Yet, deep within, she felt ready. The music had become her guide, and she trusted it implicitly. She spent days preparing, but not just technically. She meditated on the emotions she wanted to convey, the stories she wanted each melody to tell. Her fingers moved with familiarity over the keys at home, but her mind and heart were engaged in a deeper exploration. This was no longer merely practice, it was a conversation, a dialogue between her soul and the instrument, a communication that needed to resonate outward. She imagined the room, the audience, the subtle shifts in expression as her music flowed, and each day the anticipation grew. Tempered by determination, when the day arrived, she dressed simply but elegantly, choosing an ensemble that allowed her to move freely while presenting herself with confidence. She looked in the mirror and took a deep breath, reminding herself that the performance was about honesty, not perfection. Her journey had taught her that the most powerful moments came when one was vulnerable yet true, when every note reflected the depth of feeling rather than technical showmanship. She carried this lesson with her as she left for the event. The venue was grand, a beautiful hall with high ceilings and soft golden lighting that seemed to embrace the room. Guests arrived in elegant attire, conversing quietly, their voices hushed but filled with anticipation. She felt the weight of expectation, but it no longer intimidated her. She walked with measured steps, her mind focused, her heart steady. She knew that once she reached the piano, the music would take over, guiding her through the performance. The preparation, the practice, and the years of hidden dedication had all led to this moment.